You know, most respect to Shawn, man. Shawn retired. Shawn is a fighter of this generation, but like his mentality is of a fighter from like back in the day, just literally willing to fight everybody. Like it didn't matter to him, you know, losing or not, but as long as like, hey, like he gave his best and shit.
Good luck.
Shawn Porter. So, you know, my thing with the Shawn Porter fight last night, it's kind of like I expected that shit to happen. You know what I'm saying? Like, we all know that Terence Crawford is motherfucking, you know, damn near #1 or #2 pound for pound in the world. And a lot of times when you have these fights, you know, with, you know, like an elite champion and someone who is perceived to be like a contender, not a contender, but how should I say, a gatekeeper, because Shawn Porter kind of went from, you know, like champion of 147 to, you know, a gatekeeper. So it's like you want somebody like Shawn Porter underneath your resume to pretty much like make you legit, or to validate yourself as someone who wants to be, you know, a champion, right? So Shawn Porter gave his best, and the thing is, if you're gonna lose like that, lose to, you know, the #1 guy. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's always gonna be a separation between, you know, these fighters in their early rounds. And honestly, Terence Crawford is literally just damn near the best. Basically, all that's left for Terence Crawford to do at 147 right now is to fight Errol or Jaron Ennis. These are the only two guys that he can really fight that will pretty much solidify him as #1, you know, pound for pound. Well, I won't say #1 pound for pound, but as the best at 147 before he moves up to 154, because Terence Crawford is not gonna, like, we already know Terence Crawford will beat the shit out of Keith Thurman. Terence Crawford would beat the shit out of Danny Garcia. Danny Garcia moved up in weight, so who's left for him to fight? So I feel like the conversation as far as Terence Crawford now is almost finished, because unless the Spence fight gets made, he is really the best other than Errol Spence. And Jaron, he's on the come up. Like, he's still a fighter that, you know, is still making a name for himself at that, you know, at the weight division. So, you know, but we already know what he can do, because shit, man, what did Shawn Porter say when they asked him about Jaron Ennis? Nigga said no comment. He was like, yo, I didn't even want to talk about it. But the reason why I even made this video today is not even really to talk about all that shit, but it's to talk about Shawn Porter as a boxer, and just my thoughts on what Kenny Porter said about him, to him, and about him after the fight, you know, in the post-fight press conference and shit. So, to give some context, you know, Shawn Porter basically is the reason why I got into boxing. It sounds crazy, but it's true. You know, basically, because I wasn't a fan of Floyd's era. So I wasn't really into boxing when Floyd was still, you know, fighting. I got into it when he pretty much finished, when his career was done. So my first fight in boxing that got me into the sport, like legitimately got me into the sport, was Shawn Porter versus Keith Thurman. You know, long story short. And, you know, watching the fight hype interviews and the training interviews and things like that really made me like fall in love with the sport of boxing. You know, so I will give credit to Shawn Porter and Kenny Porter for pretty much like getting me into, or like sparking my initial interest in boxing. So with that said, I feel like Shawn Porter really didn't deserve what Kenny Porter said about him after the fight. Like, I felt like that was unwarranted, and I feel like they will always have that relationship, because a couple of years ago, like, most people who were watching, you know, boxing, like, let's say when Shawn Porter fought Adrian Broner, the narrative behind Kenny Porter was that Kenny Porter is like jealous of Shawn, or that he wants all the shine. And honestly, there was a time period where, you know, Kenny did all the talking. Kenny Porter did legit like all the talking. And it seemed like, you know, like 2017 and afterward, you know, Shawn Porter started doing the talking for himself, so then you started to see Shawn speaking up more. But back in the day, there was a portion where Kenny Porter used to do all the talking, and I used to see that shit. I used to see people be like, yo, like, Kenny Porter, is jealous of Shawn. Kenny Porter wants all the shine, and what the fuck? Kenny Porter wants all the shine and this and that. But I honestly, I never really believed that. Kenny Porter always struck me as a guy that cared about his son. And it's like, if anybody's jealous, it's the people that don't have that relationship, with their dads. You know what I'm saying? Like Kenny Porter to me is like a LeVar Ball. Like legit, he's the kind of father that will, bring the best out of his kids, out of his son. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm pretty sure LeVar Ball wasn't babying, Lonzo and LaMelo on their way to the NBA. Nah, like, it'll probably take, him saying certain shit that they don't want to hear. I don't expect Kenny Porter to, like, baby Shawn all the time and just be like, oh, Shawn, it's okay. Like, nah. I mean, and I'm not defending it at all, because I truly believe that, he threw Shawn under the bus. I felt like, a loss like that would only be, up against somebody like Terence Crawford. It wouldn't, mind you, he gave Errol a run for his money. He gave Thurman a run for his money. He beat Danny Garcia. He beat Ugas. So I feel like, Shawn did what he was supposed to do in his career. You know what I'm saying? He did everything that he was supposed to do. He did everything right. So I felt like it wasn't fair of Kenny, to do that. And I think that, that's just their relationship, because if you look at Shawn's face, and I seen a little bit of the post-fight press conference, Shawn didn't say nothing. Shawn was just like, Shawn was just sitting there, and he was, still defending his pops, because at this point, it might be new to us, but it's not new to him. You know what I'm saying? Like, they know what it is about their relationship. But I will say that I don't agree with that shit. I thought it was funny. I was laughing, like. But at the same time, it's like, well, you know what? That's just their relationship. I don't know why people are surprised, because, Kenny was always like that, with Shawn. But look at where it got Shawn in his career. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? So in a way, I am kind of fake defending Kenny, because, not everybody can say, I raised my son to be a champion. I raised my son to be a fucking millionaire. Like, not everybody can say that shit. But Kenny can say that. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like, yeah, Kenny Porter said what he said about Shawn, but I also think that, if you know boxing and if you follow them and you're a fan of them like I am, it's like after a while, it's like, well, you know what? We're mad about it, but I don't think Shawn is really tripping. You know what I'm saying? And he retired. Shawn retired, and I knew that was gonna happen, because it's like, if you lose to Terence Crawford, what's next? What are you gonna do next? Like, and even there was some. Like, I think there was like one interview from like months ago, and then somebody asked Kenny, like, how is Shawn, like, morale wise and stuff like that, like, how does he still get out of bed, or is this still fun for him, or some shit like that. And Kenny was like, well, as soon as it's not fun for him no more, we're not gonna do it. And then if you notice, like, Shawn, fighting Terence Crawford last night was like the first time that I saw Shawn Porter angry. Like, the first time that I saw him, like, not composed and, like, losing his cool. Like, there was something a bit different about him. I think, like, once he himself saw the separation in skill. And mind you, it might not even have been that. I think it was just the size and the skill advantage. Like, it was something that Shawn Porter really couldn't make an adjustment to physically. In order to eliminate, like, the advantages that Terence Crawford was implementing, Shawn Porter would have to be bigger. Shawn Porter is only like 5'6", maybe 5'6.5". At that, Shawn Porter is not a big guy at all, and he made Terence Crawford look like a big dude, because Terence Crawford really just fought on the outside and countered him coming in. Like, it reminded me, like, the fact that Shawn Porter wasn't able to do anything, it reminded me of when Shawn fought Kell Brook back in 2014. You know what I'm saying? Like, he just wasn't able to do anything. And it's just like Terence Crawford was literally, like, picking shots and stopped, you know what I'm saying, Shawn Porter. Because unlike Spence, where Spence was like, yo, I'm gonna fight Shawn's game and beat him at it, fucking Errol could have done the same thing that Terence did. He could have did the same shit, but he didn't do it. You know what I'm saying? So, people can't really kind of take that away from Errol. Like, just the fact that, he didn't stop Shawn Porter, or it didn't look as easy, because Errol is bigger than Terence Crawford. Errol is way bigger than Terence Crawford, in my opinion. So, But I will also say that that most respect to Shawn, man. Shawn retired. Shawn is a fighter of this generation, but like his mentality is of a fighter from like back in the day, just literally willing to fight everybody. Like it didn't matter to him, losing or not, but as long as like, hey, like he gave his best and shit. And all Shawn Porter's losses, except for like maybe last night, that was really like the only loss where I really will say that like he got defeated. Kell Brook really was just like tying up Shawn and kind of doing what Terence Crawford did, but Terence Crawford just did it like masterfully. Kell Brook did it like the cheap way. So it's like Kell Brook did it like the poor man's way, and then Crawford showed how you beat Shawn Porter decisively the way you're really supposed to beat him. And then this Errol just did it his own way or Shawn's way. So he's like, all right, so people say that I can't beat you. The only way I can beat you is to fight on the outside, then I'm going to beat you on the inside. So that's the difference between Crawford and Spence. But, much respect to Shawn, man. Shawn did his best. He lost to, arguably number 2 pound for pound. So of course it was going to look like that. Of course it was going to look like that. And honestly, I really was rooting for Shawn. Like I part of me knew that Terence Crawford would win, but part of me was rooting for Shawn just because, I feel like he just, deserved that W. And it would have made the narrative at 147 a bit more interesting. It would have, switched things up a little bit. Even when Kell Brook fought Terence Crawford last year, I was, wow. Anyway, and then on top of that, Derrick James said that about Kenny Porter, a year ago, because he was like, yo, like he's your employee, like you paying him, like it's not like he paying you, like he worked for you. You know what I'm saying? Like, mind you, I like Kenny Porter. You know what I'm saying? I respect him a lot. Like, he's somebody that I would like to just like meet, shake hands with, and have a couple of conversations and maybe train and learn some stuff from him. But for shit like what happened is why Jermell Charlo left Ronnie Shields, because of shit like that. He was like, yo, like I don't have to take disrespect from the nigga that like that's supposed to be on my team right before I go and put my life on the line. Like, you know what I'm saying? But at the same time, that's just their relationship that they have, and I feel like, hey, like everybody is mad but Shawn, and I feel like if they do have a conversation about it, which I'm pretty sure they won't, there's just an understanding there. But yeah, those are really my thoughts. Well, yeah, so those are my thoughts, although unconcise.